Africa, a continent where the faith is growing in vibrancy, has long remained a wellspring of vocations and devotion. Sarah's background brings with it not only cultural richness, but a lived experience of hardship and hope, of persecution and perseverance. His presence on the world stage speaks to the universality of the Catholic Church, that it is not Western, Eastern, or African, but Catholic, which means universal. The idea of an African pope who holds fast to tradition and radiates holiness is, for many, not just possible, it is deeply desired. It would be a sign of the Church's mission expanding with renewed energy and grounded in spiritual depth. Among the faithful, a silent but persistent hope is growing. It is the hope for a future pope who walks closely with God, who speaks not from politics, but from prayer, who stands firm in truth while embracing others with love. And in this vision, the name of Cardinal Sarah rises gently but unmistakably. His very presence reflects the dignity of a shepherd, calm in the storm, confident in Christ, compassionate with his flock. Many religious and consecrated persons longing for direction and spiritual clarity also see in him the figure of a true father. His vision of the priesthood is not managerial, it is sacred. He sees the priest not as a bureaucrat or functionary, but as an altar Christus, another Christ. He understands deeply the identity of the priesthood and has dedicated himself to restoring its beauty and purpose. His pastoral gaze is paternal, not distant. He wants priests to be strong in their mission, anchored in doctrine, and aflame with love for the Eucharist. He believes that the renewal of the Church must begin with the renewal of the clergy. To this end, he emphasizes the urgent need for robust spiritual and theological formation. In his view, a priest without prayer and without sound doctrine is vulnerable to the culture of the world. But a priest who prays, who studies, who serves in humility, such a priest becomes a beacon of Christ's love. His defense of holy seminaries as the future of the Church is part of this vision. For Cardinal Sarah, a seminary must not only teach doctrine, but form saints. His hope is that future generations of priests will be grounded in truth, nourished by the sacraments, and bold in proclaiming the gospel. Another striking quality of Sarah is his humility. Despite the high offices he has held, despite the global attention he has received, he has never once sought position or praise. He remains hidden in God. This detachment from self-interest is precisely what makes him so trustworthy. His humility is not weakness, it is the foundation of his strength. His love for the Eucharist is central to his life. He celebrates Mass not as a task, but as a sacred encounter. He exhorts the faithful to rediscover the Mass as the center of Christian life, a moment not of routine, but of awe, of offering, of transformation. Without the Eucharist, he says, the Church cannot exist. Every liturgy, no matter how small or grand, must be marked by reverence, adoration, and sacrifice. He believes that the way we celebrate Mass reflects what we believe. And for him, the Eucharist is the heart of faith, the source and summit of the Christian life. He also stands firm in defending the right of faithful Catholics to speak the truth without fear. In an age where voices rooted in tradition and orthodoxy are often dismissed or silenced, Cardinal Sarah does not remain indifferent. He speaks up not to create division, but to ensure that the fullness of the gospel is not hidden. He believes that fidelity to doctrine and freedom of expression must go hand in hand. His courage gives voice to the voiceless, encouraging many to remain steadfast in their beliefs, even when unpopular. Perhaps most rare is Sarah's ability to combine strength with gentleness. He does not bend when it comes to truth, yet he approaches others with kindness and compassion. This harmony, firm in doctrine, yet tender in love, is what reflects Christ himself. Just as the Lord was full of grace and truth, so too does Cardinal Sarah strive to unite conviction with charity. It is this delicate but powerful balance that makes so many see in him the image of a true spiritual leader for the times to come. Cardinal Robert Sarah's reflections on the state of the modern world often return to a theme that few dare to address directly: the spiritual dangers of material comfort. But his critique of Western materialism is not theoretical or ideological, it is drawn from real experience. Having grown up amid scarcity and hardship, Sarah knows both the pain of poverty and the unique temptations that come with affluence. He sees with great clarity how consumerism, comfort and a culture of excess slowly erode the vibrancy of. In his view, a church entangled in worldly luxury loses her freedom to serve God wholeheartedly. That is why he calls for a church that is poor in spirit, detached from the illusions of power and prestige, one that can love, give and serve with purity of heart. This inner detachment is not just something he preaches, it's something he lives. Those who observe Cardinal Sarah closely often note how long he waits in silence before acting or speaking, especially when faced with weighty matters. He never rushes into decisions because he believes nothing truly lasting can be accomplished without deep discernment. His entire life is steeped in prayer, in listening for the voice of the Holy Spirit. For Sarah, no strategy, no reform, no homily should come forth without first being brought before God in silence. In a world driven by urgency and noise, this posture of spiritual attentiveness is rare and powerful. It is this contemplative stillness that gives Cardinal Sarah his prophetic edge. Like the prophets of Scripture, he is unafraid to speak hard truth. He does not censor the language of the gospel to fit modern sensitivities. He speaks openly of sin, of final judgment, of heaven and hell realities that many today prefer to ignore or reinterpret. But he does so not to condemn but to awaken. His preaching is not crafted to comfort, it is meant to save. In this way, his voice echoes those of the biblical prophets who wept for their people, calling them back to God. His time at Coronum, where he served the poorest and most forgotten, revealed the heart beneath his clarity. Sarah is not a cold intellectual or an aloof administrator. He is a man who is sat with the suffering, who weeps with those who weep, and who pours out practical compassion as a sign of his deep holiness. At the center of Cardinal Sarah's entire spirituality is one named Jesus Christ. Everything he does, says and decides flows from his relationship with the Lord. His prayer is not about ritual but intimacy. His homilies are not performances but proclamations. His choices are not driven by human approval but by a desire to make Christ reign in every heart. This Christ-centeredness is the compass of his life, and many who listen to him speak sense immediately that here is a man who truly lives for God alone. When confronted with modern ideologies that pull souls away from truth, Sarah does not waste time in intellectual entanglement. Instead, he points gently but firmly to the gospel. He calls people to repentance, to grace, to begin again. His message is simple yet deeply demanding. Personal conversion. He teaches that no program or campaign will bring revival to the church unless hearts are first changed. He believes the holiness of the faithful is not optional, it is essential. The church's mission, in his view, is not to survive or adjust, it is to lead souls to heaven. Everything else, no matter how well-intentioned, must serve that final goal. His vision is not confined to structures or policies, it lifts the gaze of the Church toward eternity. He reminds us that the truest reform begins not in documents, but in the sanctuary of the human heart. This deep interior renewal is what Cardinal Sarah calls every believer to pursue. For him, structural changes alone will never be enough. The root of the Church's strength lies in the sanctity of her members, and so he turns the spotlight away from external strategies and back to the call of the gospel: conversion, penance, holiness. His words strike a chord with many, especially those who feel exhausted by bureaucracy and yearn for spiritual authenticity. Sarah also holds a profound love for the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Mother of God. He often turns to her in his personal prayer and calls upon her intercession for the Church. He believes that the Church must be Marian in heart to be truly Catholic in identity. This devotion to Mary is not sentimental, it is theological. He sees her as a model of purity, humility, and perfect discipleship. She stands as the star that guides the Church in turbulent times. His love for her is yet another mark of his deep and authentic faith. What further distinguishes Cardinal Sarah is his respect for the various liturgical traditions within the global Church. His heart is open to the East, and he speaks with admiration about the spiritual treasures of the Eastern Rite. He does not push uniformity but celebrates legitimate diversity rooted in shared doctrine. For him, beauty flourishes when unity is anchored in truth. In a time of tension and division, Sarah's approach is not to splinter the Church further, but to call her back to Christ, the one source of unity. Many see in him a potential pope who could unify without compromising the faith, a leader who can gather the flock without blurring doctrine. He is not aligned with factions, but with fidelity. His friendships with deeply orthodox figures like Cardinal Gerhard Müller and Pope Emeritus Benedict Roman XVI further reinforce his image as a man committed to truth. He surrounds himself with those who share his love for the Church, and in doing so, reflects a quiet network of holiness. These bonds of spiritual fraternity point not to politics, but to integrity. When Cardinal Sarah is asked about the challenges the Church currently faces, he never reacts with panic or despair. Instead, he places them in historical context. He reminds the faithful that the Church has faced even darker hours in her long journey, and each time, God has renewed her. This unshakable confidence in divine providence gives him peace. He does not act like a man overwhelmed by crisis. He acts like a man whose anchor is God. His emphasis on silence, understood not as absence, but as the space where God acts, is perhaps one of his most timely contributions. In a world addicted to noise, distraction, and opinion, Sarah urges believers to retreat into quiet and there rediscover the voice of the Lord. If he were ever to ascend to the papacy, many believe the spirituality of silence would become a defining mark of his pontificate. It would not be an age of slogans, but of substance, an era not of endless debate, but of returning to God in humility. And perhaps most powerful of all is his quiet readiness for martyrdom. Cardinal Sarah has openly acknowledged that in today's world, being a true follower of Christ may require one's life, and he is prepared for that, not with drama, but with peace. His willingness to suffer for Christ inspires many in the Church militant, those striving daily to live the faith in a world that increasingly resists. Cardinal Robert Sarah's life experience as an African man, and as a member of a religious minority that has faced persecution, has given him a rare sensitivity to the trials the Church faces today. His understanding of adversity is not academic, it is personal, imprinted in his soul. He knows what it means to stand firm in faith, when doing so invites ridicule, danger, or suffering, and from that lived experience arises a profound inner strength, the kind that cannot be learned, only forged in fire. This strength, refined through trials, is precisely the kind of strength needed to guide the Church through the storms of our age. Sarah's love for the poor is not a slogan, nor is it based on politics or public perception. It is rooted in the gospel itself. For him, to love the poor is to stand with Christ. He lives this beatitude not as a theological concept, but as a daily commitment. His simplicity, his humility, and his care for the little ones of the world reflect the very heart of the gospel message. And it is for this reason, among many others, that hope continues to grow among the faithful. In times of darkness and confusion, many quietly pray that God might raise a shepherd like Cardinal Sarah, a pope formed in silence, fire and grace, who would guide the flock with courage, charity, and unwavering fidelity to the truth. When believers look to the uncertain future of the Church, they do not ask for clever words or institutional innovations. They long for holiness, and in Sarah, many see this embodied not as a performance, but as a way of life. He represents a vision of papal leadership, rooted not in power, but in purity. His entire being reflects a call to return to the essence of the faith, to prayer, penance, and the liturgy. If elected, he would remind the world that our homeland is not here, but in heaven. He would lift eyes upward, away from the noise and distractions of the present moment, toward the eternal. His closeness to saints like Benedict, Francis, and Thérèse of Lisieux shapes his. Like them, he understands that it is not through human projects or strategies that the Church is renewed, but through surrender to divine grace. Even with all his responsibilities, Sarah has remained a man of interior stillness, a contemplative in action. He listens to God before speaking to men, and in an era flooded by words, such contemplation would bring healing to a wounded Church. His ability to speak boldly against evil, even when it wears the mask of good, is a mark of his prophetic calling. He knows that real charity is not silence in the face of lie. True love must correct, must illuminate, must guide. He has no fear of worldly rejection, because he walks with the conviction that only Christ judges rightly. This spiritual freedom, the courage to speak truth, without seeking applause, is what the Church so desperately needs. Even more moving is his ability to forgive. When attacked, misunderstood, or dismissed, Sarah harbors no bitterness. Like Christ, he offers his wounds in silence, transforming suffering into intercession. This spiritual maturity comes from a life immersed in prayer, humility, and complete abandonment to God's providence. A man with such a heart would be a gift beyond price. His clear resistance to ideologies that twist or dilute Christian morality is both firm and gentle. He never yells, never accuses, but his clarity slices through confusion. He does not bend with the wind. He stands as a luminous beacon in the storm, a firm anchor when many feel adrift. His call for a church less entangled with worldly concerns and more dedicated to the sacred is powerful. For Sarah, the church must mirror the holiness of God, not the culture of the age. He calls with particular urgency for priests and bishops to reclaim lives of holiness and awe. His personal simplicity, seen in the way he dresses, eats, and lives, is itself a sermon. Sarah has nothing flashy about him. He owns little, speaks softly, and lives plainly. This quiet renunciation of consumerism speaks louder than any declaration. He is a living reminder of what it means to be poor in spirit. And when he speaks, there is a serenity that flows from his soul, a peace that only those close to God can offer. Even when addressing the most difficult topics, scandal, sin, doctrinal confusion, his voice remains calm. He does not stir fear, he restores peace. Many believe that such a serene pontiff could bring a renewed sense of spiritual calm to the Church. His love for the priesthood is passionate and uncompromising. He calls priests to be not just good men, but holy men, men of prayer, chastity, and sacrifice. For Sarah, the wounds the Church carries today can only be healed through radical holiness. A pope who lives this call, who not only exhorts but embodies it, could lead the Church into true renewal. Sarah has the unique ability to combine compassion for the sinner with uncompromising opposition to sin. He understands that love does not ignore sin, it invites transformation. He refuses to offer soothing words that lull souls into complacency. Instead, he calls for conversion, a healing that comes through truth. Many who observe him see echoes of St. Gregory, the greater contemplative soul drawn from the quiet to govern the Church with strength and clarity, a man who would retreat from the world if not for the mission of saving souls. In Sarah, the image of a strong yet gentle pilot guiding Peter's bark through the waves becomes real. His care for the poor and commitment to social justice are not shaped by politics, but by the gospel itself. His defense of religious liberty would be relentless, not in anger, but in truth. Having seen firsthand what persecution looks like, he would never yield to worldly powers at the cost of integrity. He would stand as a pillar of faith, unmovable. And for those seeking a guide in the present wilderness, his book Catechism of the Spiritual Life offers a roadmap. Within its pages, he outlines a journey built on prayer, sacramental life, and silence. Under his leadership, the Church would not chase applause, it would kneel before God. His vision of the Church as an army of light amid a darkened world is not fantasy, it is a call to holiness, to courage, and to return to the fire that once ignited the saints. For Cardinal Robert Sarah, the purpose of life is not comfort, approval, or worldly success, it is sanctity. We are not called to blend in with the culture, but to become saints, set apart by love and truth. This conviction breathes through every word he speaks, every gesture he makes, and every decision he contemplates. In his view, the greatest crisis of our time is not technological or political, it is the loss of the sense of holiness. He reminds the Church that each believer is called to walk the narrow path, not in fear, but in grace. And many believe that if such a man were to sit on the chair of Peter, it would mark the beginning of a new spiritual springtime, a reawakening of vocations, a renewal of hearts,
and a rediscovery of sacred purpose. His devotion to the Eucharist is one of most moving aspects of his life. Cardinal Sarah is often found in silent adoration for long hours before the Blessed Sacrament, not out of obligation, but out of deep love. He does not simply speak about Christ, he listens to him, hidden in the tabernacle, radiant in the host. He believes that every authentic renewal of the Church must begin at the foot of the altar, in stillness, in reverence, in adoration. A pope who returned the Church to this posture, kneeling before God, rather than running after the world, would inaugurate an era of grace that transcends headlines, policies, or applause. When Cardinal Sarah confronts the challenges of modernity, he does not react as a politician or strategist. He sees with the eyes of faith. His approach is deeply theological, rooted in divine wisdom rather than human agendas. He does not offer ideological responses, he offers Christ. This supernatural vision, this ability to interpret events in the light of God's providence, distinguishes a true shepherd from a mere administrator. And yet his clarity does not cancel out compassion. His firmness in defending doctrine is always balanced by a gentle patience for those who sincerely seek the truth. Sarah possesses that rare spiritual art, the ability to welcome without compromising. He knows how to open his arms while keeping the cross at the center. This is the delicate and essential balance that marked the great saints, and is urgently needed in any successor to Saint Peter. Many bishops and cardinals who have worked with him recognize this depth. They know he is not influenced by media narratives or political pressure. He listens first and foremost to the voice of God. He is not a weather vane, turning with the winds of public opinion. He is a compass, pointing always toward the eternal. His insistence on frequent confession as a path to sanctification is another key dimension of his pastoral vision. He urges the faithful to rediscover the sacraments, not as cultural customs or social rites, but as encounters with the living God. For him, the sacramental life is the lifeblood of the Church. He does not reduce it to obligation, he sees it as mercy, as healing, as restoration. In his teaching and in his example, Sarah calls all to draw close to Christ in the confessional, to kneel not in shame, but in hope. His very face, marked by years of prayer and interior struggle, communicates a profound authority, not the kind granted by men, but the kind that radiates from communion with God. To be governed by such a man, not through force or image, but through holiness, would be a sign that God is once again moving powerfully in history. It would signal not a plan unfolding, but divine grace pouring out. And so, in the quiet of many hearts around the world, there rises a simple, humble prayer, that if it is God's will, he may raise up a pope like Robert Sarah, a shepherd molded by silence, strengthened by suffering, purified by prayer, a pastor after the very heart of Christ, one who remains faithful, even when the cross weighs heavy, one who is poor in spirit, yet rich in charity, one who adores God before acting for man, a man of truth and tenderness. This is the hope that does not die. It is not born of strategy or popularity, but of a longing for holiness to once again lead the Church. For in the end, the faithful do not cry out for a charismatic leader or a cultural figurehead. They beg heaven for a holy pope, a man of God, who will lead souls not into trends, but into one who will remind the Church of her first love, one who will lift her gaze to heaven, and say with his life as well as his lips, "Come, follow Christ." In the silence of chapels across the world, where candles flicker and souls kneel in hope, the name of Cardinal Robert Sarah continues to rise, not with noise, but with quiet strength, not through campaigns, but through the humble prayers of the faithful. They do not ask for spectacle. They do not cry out for change measured in headlines. They ask for holiness, a shepherd who will not guide by opinion polls, but by the eternal voice of God. In times of uncertainty, we look not to strategy, but to sanctity, not to programs, but to prayer. And in Cardinal Sarah, many recognize the shape of a man, formed in both. He is not perfect, nor does he claim to be, but in his silence, in his steadfastness, and in his deep love for the Church, we see something rare, a soul transparent before God, a man whose gaze is fixed on eternity, and who longs to lead others there, not with force, but with the firm and tender voice of a true shepherd. Whether or not his path leads to the papacy, one truth remains. The witness of Cardinal Robert Sarah is already bearing fruit. He has reminded the Church that strength is found in surrender, that reform begins on one's knees, and that fidelity, quiet, courageous, and unshaken, is the clearest path to renewal. The world watches, the Church prays, and heaven listens. May God in His time and wisdom give us the shepherd we need, not to please us, but to sanctify us, not to guide us safely through the world, but to lead us faithfully home.
In moments when the Catholic Church seems to stand at a crossroads, facing storms of confusion and the winds of change, there emerges a figure whose presence brings calm, clarity, and conviction. Across continents and within countless hearts, one name is spoken with admiration and a sense of spiritual gravity: Cardinal Robert Sarah. His story begins far from the grand basilicas of Rome, in a modest village called Aruz in Guinea, where in 1945 a child was born who would one day become a guiding light for many. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel RVM for more powerful messages like this. Through simplicity and deep devotion, he grew into a man whose unwavering belief would one day echo through chapels, cathedrals, and quiet prayer corners across the globe. To many, he stands as a symbol not only of tradition, but of unshaken faith in a time when the world so desperately longs for authenticity and spiritual courage. Long before the red garments of cardinalship or the solemn responsibilities of global leadership, young Robert Sarah was known for something rare in innocence of soul: a heart inclined to prayer and a silent strength that caught the attention of those around him. As a teenager, his path was already turning towards something sacred. Missionaries and spiritual mentors recognized a distinct light within him, one not sparked by ambition, but by a thirst for holiness. With humility that would become his lifelong hallmark, he entered the seminary not with noise or fanfare, but with a profound desire to be formed by truth, to listen to God's voice, and to live a life rooted in scripture, tradition, and service. If you're enjoying this story, comment number 1 to show your support. By the age of 24, he stood at the altar not as a student, but as a shepherd. His priestly hands were consecrated to serve, to bless, to guide. The political environment in Guinea was deeply challenging, especially for Christians. The regime was harsh, and the church was often watched with suspicion. Yet in those difficult years, Father Sarah became a quiet flame in the darkness. He never raised his voice in anger, but he raised it in prayer. He did not waver under pressure, but stood firm with the conviction that his strength came not from the world, but from the one who conquered the world. Where fear spread, he chose hope. Where others withdrew, he leaned in with courage born of trust in divine providence. If you believe in the power of prayer and faith, don't forget to like and share this video to inspire others. Then came a moment that surprised even many within the church. In 1979, at just 34 years of age, he was appointed Archbishop of Conakry by Pope St. John Paul. At that time, he became the youngest archbishop anywhere in the world. But age did not define his leadership, his faith did. His mission was never about power or prestige, but about serving Christ faithfully. His episcopal ministry was marked by a unique balance, firm in truth, yet gentle in approach. Even as he faced resistance and poverty, he carried out his duties with remarkable composure, never compromising on the essentials of faith, always rooted in love. Over time, his steadfastness and integrity drew the attention of Rome. He was called into closer collaboration with the heart of the Church itself, the Holy See. In Vatican corridors, often quiet and hidden from the public eye, Cardinal Sarah took on roles that required discretion, vision, and deep spiritual insight. From his work in the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples to his service in the Pontifical Council Cor Unum, he brought not only administrative excellence but an interior life steeped in prayer. Colleagues noted his silence not as distance but as a powerful form of listening. For Cardinal Sarah, silence was an emptiness, it was space where God could speak. His inner strength and spiritual depth were unmistakable. In 2010, Pope Benedict XVI entrusted him with a role of great importance, prefect of the Congregation for Divine Worship and the Discipline of the Sacraments. It was here that Cardinal Sarah's devotion to the sacred became especially visible. He defended the reverence of the liturgy not for the sake of nostalgia, but because he believed deeply that the Mass is not about us, it is about God. It is where heaven meets earth, where the soul meets its Creator. His emphasis on adoration, silence and sacred beauty was a gentle but firm reminder to the faithful. Worship must be more than performance, it must be an act of love, humility and awe. Amid these responsibilities, he also gave the world the gift of his written voice. His book God or Nothing was not just a bestseller among Catholics, it was a wake-up call. In clear, courageous words, he painted the spiritual crisis of the modern world, yet not with despair but with hope rooted in truth. He invited readers not just to observe the darkness, but to return to the light. His voice, though quiet, became prophetic, but it didn't stop there. His later work, The Power of Silence, opened another door into the soul of this remarkable man. In a world addicted to noise, opinion and distraction, Cardinal Sarah wrote about silence, not as withdrawal from responsibility, but as the path to encounter God. He taught that only in silence can we truly hear the whisper of the divine. That book became more than words, it became a mirror for many who felt lost in the chaos of modern life, and longed to find God again in the stillness. In a generation that often drowns in constant chatter, digital distractions, and the clamor of unfiltered opinions, Cardinal Robert Sarah offers a rare and refreshing alternative: withdrawal into silence. Not silence as escape, but as salvation. He teaches that in the stillness, one finds God again. His words do not simply appeal to intellect, they reach into the soul of the modern person, exhausted by noise and desperate for peace. For many, he is not just a theologian or a church leader, he is a guide out of the storm. His invitation to return to the quiet is not a rejection of the world, but an embrace of eternity, and in that silence, hearts rediscover reverence, clarity, and the voice of the one who speaks not in thunder but in a whisper. What makes Cardinal Sarah's message even more compelling is his deep-rooted fidelity to the Church's sacred structure. In an age where disagreement often leads to division, he stands as a model of respectful obedience. Even when he addresses difficult or controversial matters, his tone remains one of reverence, never rebellion. He challenges ideas, not persons. He speaks truth that may be uncomfortable, yet he does so as a son who loves his mother, the Church, with all his heart. His loyalty to the Holy Father is unwavering, and his every word, though sometimes firm, is spoken from a place of service, not defiance. This unwavering devotion has not gone unnoticed. In an era clouded by confusion, when the voices of compromise often grow louder than the voice of conscience, Cardinal Sarah has become a quiet pillar. His life is a mirror of heroic fidelity. He seeks no applause, no popularity. His focus is singular, to honor God. While some leaders chase relevance or public approval, Sarah walks a path where his only audience is heaven. This kind of radical faithfulness doesn't just inspire clergy, it touches lay people, religious, families, and young seekers who are searching for someone to trust. His example is more than intellectual, it is deeply pastoral. In every gesture, every homily, every encounter, he calls people not to comfort, but to conversion. He reminds the faithful that time is fleeting, and eternity awaits. His perspective is never limited to politics or trends. It is rooted in the timeless truths of the Catholic faith. For him, the Church must be open to all but never empty of truth. He insists that authentic love, true charity, cannot be separated from truth. To offer mercy without truth is sentimentality. To offer truth without mercy is cruelty. In Sarah, the faithful encounter someone who walks that narrow but holy path between the two. Even when addressing the most painful realities of the Church or society, he does not lose the tenderness of a father. His gaze is firm, but his heart remains open. His love for the liturgy, his profound respect for sacred tradition, and his consistent prayer life reflect not an austere figure, but a deeply human and holy one. Those who have met him often speak of his humility, his gentleness, and the sense that he carries within him the fragrance of sanctity. In a time where scandals have wounded many, his biography shines with the rare light of integrity. No controversies surround his name, only devotion, sacrifice and silent endurance. More than just a leader, Cardinal Sarah has become a beacon of hope, especially for Africa. His journey from a humble village in Guinea to the heart of the Vatican is more than a personal success story. It is a testimony to the universality of the Church. His rise confirms that holiness and leadership are not bound by geography, wealth, or background. In his life, many see proof that grace can overcome every limitation. He reminds us that God does not choose the qualified, but qualifies the chosen. His presence in the global Church affirms that the gospel truly belongs to all nations. Those who have heard his speeches or read his writings often come away with a sense of deeper understanding, not just of doctrine, but of the human soul. His homilies are not theatrical, they are rich with meaning, born not of intellectual showmanship, but of hours spent in silence before the Blessed Sacrament. His words carry weight, not because they are loud but because they are steeped in prayer, study, and pen. He doesn't speak to impress, he speaks to awaken, and in a world that often chooses surface over substance, Cardinal Sarah offers something more, a path into spiritual depth. At the same time, he is not blind to the suffering of our time. He does not retreat into spiritual ideals and ignore the world's wounds. Quite the opposite, he speaks honestly about the crises of the family, the loss of faith in modern cultures, and the rising persecution of believers. He sees the world not through fear, but through compassion. And in every warning he offers, there is also hope, the hope that if we return to God, if we rekindle reverence, if we reclaim silence, we will find our way again. Like the prophets of old, Cardinal Robert Sarah speaks with a boldness that pierces the fog of modern ambiguity. His words are not calculated to win favor or headlines, but to awaken souls. He does not shy away from uncomfortable truths, even if they cost him applause. His courage is not loud, but it is unmistakable. In a time when many prefer silence over confrontation, Sarah chooses truth over approval. His voice, clear and unwavering, has become a lantern in the darkness for many who feel lost in an age of confusion, especially among the youth, who hunger not for trendiness but for truth. Cardinal Sarah stands out as a spiritual father, one who offers not easy answers, but eternal wisdom. His reflections on the Eucharist, the power of adoration, and the life of prayer speak with the weight of lived experience. He does not theorize, he witnesses. To young Catholics searching for something real, he offers something rare, authenticity without compromise. He is not trying to appeal to the world, he is trying to lead it toward heaven. His presence itself carries a peace that cannot be explained by status or position. It is the kind of peace that only comes from walking closely with Christ. With a calm voice and a steady gaze, he communicates a confidence rooted not in himself, but in the gospel. Cardinal Sarah's understanding of suffering is not learned from books, it was written on the pages of his own life. Having grown up in a region marked by hardship, economic struggle, and religious tension, he knows what it means to be vulnerable, to be voiceless. This background did not harden him, it deepened. It gave him the rare gift of genuine compassion, not born from theory or sentiment, but from real pain. When he speaks to the broken-hearted, to the poor, to the persecuted, he does so as one of them. His voice carries the weight of shared sorrow, and thus it heals. His defense of life, from its very beginning in the womb to its natural end, is unwavering. It is not a political stance, it is a moral imperative shaped by love and truth. In a time when many leaders waver under the pressure of ideologies, Sarah stands immovable. He does not tailor his beliefs to fit the mood of the moment. He upholds the sacredness of every human being, and speaks fearlessly for the voiceless. His pro-life convictions are not abstract ideals, but are rooted in a deep reverence for human dignity. This integrity is one of the reasons many faithful see him as a strong candidate for the papacy. But it is not just his moral stance, it is his vision for the liturgy, his passion for reverent worship, that also draws heart. In a church where many miss the sense of mystery and contemplation during the Mass, Sarah offers something profound, a return to the sacred, a rediscovery of awe. He does not merely suggest reforms, he embodies them. His life matches his work. He speaks with authority, not because he demands it, but because he has lived it. His insights into the current state of the Church, especially his critique of what he once described as the self-demolition of the Church, come from a place of sorrow, not bitterness. He does not lash out, he laments, and he calls for a renewal not based on revolt, but on reverence. He believes in reform, yes, but not through innovation for its own sake. He calls the Church not to break from her past, but to rediscover the beauty of her foundation. This is why so many see him, not as a revolutionary, but as a restorer. For Cardinal Sarah, true reform comes not from adapting to the world, but from turning back to the gospel in its full depth. He urges a return to what is eternal, not a chase after what is fleeting. His clarity brings comfort to those disoriented by the shifting sands of opinion. He doesn't try to follow the culture, he points to Christ. In doing so, he offers something that transcends trends. He offers timeless truth. His personal life reflects this message with remarkable coherence. He lives simply, without ostentation. His clothing, his demeanor, even his way of walking, reflect a man who has given himself entirely to God. He does not chase titles or honors. His rooms are simple, his meals are modest. What fills his days are not public appearances, but silent hours of prayer, study and sacrificial service. His evangelical poverty is not something he speaks of, it is something he lives. For those who know him, Cardinal Sarah embodies what it means to be a shepherd after the heart of Christ. Because of this, his name often rises not through campaigns or public endorsements, but in the whispered prayers of the faithful. Many Catholics around the world look to him with a hope that goes beyond politics. They long for a shepherd who leads with holiness, who heals with truth, who speaks with conviction, and listens with the heart of a father. For countless believers, Cardinal Robert Sarah seems to be the answer to that longing, a leader whose life reflects the gospel, whose presence recalls the saints, and whose witness could lead the Church into a renewed era of holiness and clarity. There is a quiet movement growing, a humble cry among the faithful, asking God to raise up a pope who walks closely with Christ, who guards tradition, who speaks truth in love. And often in those prayers, the name of Robert Sarah is gently spoken. It's not about ambition, it's about witness. His prayerful silence before the Eucharist, his contemplative spirit, his fidelity to doctrine, and his compassionate leadership all contribute to a sense that here is a man formed, not by headlines, but by grace. For Cardinal Sarah, the core of the Church's suffering is not merely organizational or external, it is deeply spiritual. He often says that the crisis we face is fundamentally a crisis of faith. Programs and reforms, though useful, cannot substitute for conversion. Without authentic belief, he warns, all change becomes superficial. When he speaks of renewal, it is always a return to the essentials, the cross, the Eucharist, the Word of God. He does not look for shortcuts, he invites the Church to rediscover its soul. And when he speaks about the liturgy, he does so not as an administrator concerned with protocol, he speaks as a man in love with God. He sees the Mass as the heart of the Church, the place where heaven touches earth. For him, every gesture, every word, every silence matters because it is directed toward the Almighty. He does not want to modernize worship, he wants it to reveal the mystery of the divine. And in that he reminds us all of what we may have forgotten, that the liturgy is not about us, it is about God. To Cardinal Robert Sarah, the liturgy is not simply a religious gathering or a ceremonial obligation, it is heaven descending upon earth, the sacred moment where the divine meets the human in mystery and reverence. He believes the Holy Mass must be celebrated, not as a performance or social event, but as an act of adoration, rich with solemnity and awe. In an era where sacred rituals are sometimes reduced to spectacle or stripped of mystery, his vision resounds with those whose hearts long for transcendence. His defense of the traditional liturgy and the ad orientem posture, where priest and faithful alike face God, serves as a quiet but bold invitation to rediscover the purpose of worship, to lift hearts toward the eternal. Cardinal Sarah has consistently emphasized that by turning our physical and spiritual gaze toward God during the liturgy, the Church remembers who she truly is, called out of the world, yet sent into it with divine purpose. His insistence on restoring the spirit of reverence is not about aesthetic preferences, it's about recovering the soul of worship. In a time marked by confusion and relativism, his unwavering commitment to doctrinal clarity offers spiritual refuge. With calm resolve, he proclaims timeless truths about marriage, the sacredness of family, the dignity of life from conception to natural death, and the true meaning of human sexuality. His voice is firm, his tone peaceful, and his convictions unshakable. When he speaks about these truths, Cardinal Sarah does not aim to provoke or polarize, he seeks to heal. He does not fear discomfort, if it means remaining faithful to the gospel. His defense of the Christian family is not merely a theological statement, it is a prophetic reminder that the family is the cornerstone of every society. He understands deeply that when families crumble, civilizations weaken. In this light, his call for marital fidelity and parental responsibility becomes not only countercultural, but deeply necessary, a healing balm in a world lost in confusion and moral uncertainty. He also speaks often and movingly about suffering, not as something to be avoided at all costs, but as a mystery to be embraced in the light of the cross. Having endured persecution and hardship himself, he knows the transformative power of redemptive suffering. To him, suffering united with Christ is not defeat, but a path to holiness. His reflections on the cross are not abstract or distant, they are personal and pastoral. He teaches that the acceptance of suffering in faith can lead a soul into profound union with the crucified Lord. And in this teaching, so difficult yet so liberating, many find the strength to carry their own crosses with renewed purpose. His connection with Pope Benedict XVI, both in theological depth and spiritual vision, is evident. Sarah shares Benedict's diagnosis of the Church's challenges as fundamentally spiritual, not structural. He does not seek superficial adjustments, but advocates for a renewal grounded in tradition, faith, and science. To many, he is seen as the natural continuation of Benedict's legacy, bridging generations with truth and humility. And even when he is misunderstood or unfairly criticized, Sarah does not respond with anger or defensiveness. He responds with silence, prayer, and patience. This serenity under pressure, this gentleness in the face of adversity, is what inspires so many to see in him a shepherd who would lead with the heart of Christ. One of the most compelling aspects of Cardinal Sarah's profile is his understanding of the papacy, not as a seat of power, but as a mission of service. He does not speak of political influence or institutional dominance. He speaks of souls, of salvation, of sacred responsibility. He envisions a church less involved in human strategy and more immersed in divine purpose. His concept of leadership flows not from the world's playbook, but from the gospel's call to serve, to shepherd, to sacrifice. This is especially powerful considering his experience growing up under oppressive regimes. He has witnessed firsthand the dangers of tyranny, ideological manipulation, and the silencing of faith. He understands what many in the Western world are only beginning to recognize, that religious freedom cannot be taken for granted. His voice carries the strength of one who has suffered, the wisdom of one who has endured. In a global church increasingly challenged by secular ideologies and persecution, his courage would serve as a strong and steady shield. Even in his speech, Cardinal Sarah demonstrates restraint. He chooses words carefully, refusing the flood of empty rhetoric that so often characterizes modern discourse. His style is contemplative, drawing from deep wells of prayer and reflection. Every sentence bears the weight of silence. In this way, he reminds the faithful of the great saints, those who spoke not to impress, but to illuminate. Even when he critiques the failures of the modern world, he does so with a heart full of hope. He does not despair, because his eyes remain fixed on Christ's final victory. Sarah teaches that Christian hope is not naive optimism, it is certainty in God's faithfulness, a hope rooted in the blood of the cross and the empty tomb. He does not promise comfort or convenience, instead he calls for repentance, spiritual depth and holiness. It is precisely this honesty, this refusal to dilute the gospel that draws people to him. Many long for this kind of authenticity, for a shepherd who will not flatter them, but will lead them. He also shows great wisdom in navigating the Church's cultural diversity. While he appreciates and respects local customs and expressions of faith, he is clear that unity in doctrine and morals is non-negotiable. He stands against a fragmented Church, warning that contradictions in teaching will only bring confusion and division. His vision of Catholicism is as it has always been meant to be, universal in reach,
unwavering in truth. When addressing the major challenges of our era, be they moral, social or spiritual, Cardinal Sarah does not slip into partisan ideologies. He speaks from a place beyond the left-right divide. For him, the mission of the Church is not to mirror the culture, but to elevate it, not to follow trends, but to proclaim Christ crucified and risen. This clarity is a rare gift in times where compromise often clouds conviction. And so, when the faithful think of Cardinal Sarah in the context of the papacy, it is not out of politics or strategy, it is out of a deep spiritual yearning. They do not imagine a revolution, but a restoration, a quiet, steady, soul-centered renewal, a return to the wellsprings of faith, a pontificate marked not by noise, but by the transforming power of silence. It is a dream shared quietly by cardinals, bishops, priests and the laity. Our hope that someone so faithful, so respectful of the Church's traditions, and so filled with prayer, could lead them through the storms with wisdom and holiness. Even those who may not align with all of Cardinal Robert Sarah's views cannot deny one essential truth about him. He is a man of profound integrity. His consistency, humility and unwavering commitment to truth have earned him respect across a broad spectrum within the Church and beyond. In an age where authenticity is rare and motives are often questioned, Sarah's sincerity shines. He does not speak to gain applause, nor does he act to advance personal ambition. He serves, and he does so with the understanding that the mission of the Pope, as entrusted by Christ to Peter, is above all to strengthen the faith of his brothers and sisters. For Sarah, this means not innovation for its own sake, but the faithful transmission of what has been handed down through the centuries, the sacred deposit of faith. He knows that in stormy times when spiritual confusion abounds, the Church must stand not on the shifting sands of trend or ideology, but on the unshakable rock of truth. His love for the Church's liturgical heritage is not driven by nostalgia or aesthetic preference, but by a deep belief that tradition is a living wellspring. He sees it not as a burden of the past, but as a light for the present, a sacred rhythm that nourishes the soul, grounds the faithful, and unites the generations in a shared expression of worship. To him, tradition is alive. It moves, it breathes, it carries the voices of the saints and the teachings of Christ through time, offering a source of identity in a world that has forgotten its roots. What makes Cardinal Sarah's words carry such weight is that his life bears witness to that. There is no contradiction between what he teaches and how he lives. His days are filled with silence, study and service. His ministry is grounded in prayer and sustained by penance. He does not seek the spotlight. He often disappears into the background, quietly tending to souls and honoring the presence of God. His example, more than his arguments, is what convinces. In an age where many hunger for leaders who not only speak of holiness, but embody it, Cardinal Sarah stands out. His spiritual discernment is also widely admired. He has the rare gift of seeing beyond appearances, reading the signs of the times without being swept away by fleeting trends. He sees the Church not just as it is, but as it is called to become. Many believe that his African roots bring something beautiful and prophetic to the universal Church.